All right, so you guys asked for it. We're diving into the story of Timothy Burkhart today,
Yeah, Timothy Burkhart.
a serial killer operated in Parkland, Washington.
Okay.
Not exactly a household name like, some of the others we've covered,
Right.
but just as disturbing.
Yeah.
And we've got all your sources here. They paint a pretty vivid picture.
Yeah.
So,
Really fascinating how this one kind of played out.
yeah.
You think about Parkland, Washington, 1986. Seems like a pretty normal town, but things are about to get pretty dark.
Yeah. Let's rewind all the way back to 86.
Okay.
Start with the case of Denise Sully,
Hmm.
17 years old, last seen at a bowling alley with the guy, just Tim.
Oh, wow.
But even back then, there were already, clues pointing to Burkhart.
Really? Like what?
Well, there was a friend of Denise's who gave a description, and they even made a facial composite.
Huh. So they had a kind of a visual, even then.
Yeah, but like we see in a lot of these cases, the pieces just didn't come together right away.
Right. Those early clues, sometimes they don't make sense till way later.
Exactly.
Wow.
Weeks went by, and then tragically, Denise's body was discovered.
Oh, man.
And then just a few months later, another teenager is found murdered, Kimberly Ann Payne.
Oh, no.
Also a runaway, and get this, last seen at that same bowling alley.
No way. You're kidding?
Yeah, I mean,
What are the odds?
it's crazy, right? Two young girls, same location, both victims of this, phantom killer.
That's eerie, man.
And there was even a tip that came in about a Kim Burkhart,
Oh, wow.
but that lead went cold.
Of course. Of course. Adds to the whole mystery, right?
Yeah, and it just makes you think all those little details,
Mm-hmm.
they can be so crucial, but you only see it in hindsight.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't realize at the time.
So we have these two murders, 86, and then things go quiet for years.
So what, Burkhart just disappears?
Pretty much back into society like nothing happened.
Man, it's creepy how some of these guys could just blend in, huh?
Totally. But that darkness, it was still there.
Oh, yeah.
Lurking.
Waiting to come back out.
And it did in 2001.
Okay, so what, 15 years later?
Yeah, 15 years later, two more murders.
Oh, no.
This time, adult women, Catherine Coates, she was 72, and Rebecca Nash, 48.
Wow, so he's not just targeting young girls anymore.
It seems like his MO changed, yeah.
Now, that is interesting. I wonder why the change after all those years.
Yeah, I mean, was it just opportunity or did something, change in him?
Right, like what was going on in his head all that time?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have these two new murders in 2001, no apparent connection to the earlier ones, at least not yet.
Right.
So what was the turning point? What finally connected the dots?
Well, remember that tip about Kim Burkhart back in 86?
Mm-hmm.
Years later, another one of Burkhart's relatives contacts the police.
Oh, wow.
They had seen a composite sketch from the 2001 murders,
Mm-hmm.
and they thought it looked just like him.
Hold on, are you serious? It's almost like fate stepped in or something.
It really is. And this is where Detective Gene Miller enters the picture, a cold case investigator.
Okay.
He starts piecing it all together. He sees that name popping up, even with the different spellings, in those old reports.
Right.
Starts using new software, looking for variations on that name, and boom, he lands on Timothy Ray Burkhart.
It's amazing how technology like that can crack a case wide open.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
So what did Detective Miller find when he started digging into Burkhart's past?
Oh, he found a pattern, a very disturbing pattern.
So like what?
Well, turns out Burkhart was actually suspected in an attempted kidnapping back in 1984.
Wow.
Charges were never filed, though.
Okay.
And then you have the murders in 2001. It was all starting to come together.
It's like the puzzle pieces were falling into place.
Exactly, all pointed to Burkhart.
But did they have enough to arrest him? Like solid evidence?
Well, they were getting there, for sure.
Okay.
But the real breakthrough, that came from a very unexpected place.
I bet this is where the DNA comes in.
You got it. Detective Miller requested DNA testing on the evidence from the 1986 murders, Denise Sully and Kimberly Ann Payne.
Wait, so they had kept all that evidence from way back then?
It's standard procedure. You always hope that technology will catch up.
Wow, that's some forward thinking right there.
It was a gamble that paid off, big time. The results came back, and it was a match.
No way.
Timothy Burkhart was officially linked to the murders of both girls.
So after all those years, those two young victims finally got some justice.
Exactly. Their families finally had some answers.
What about the 2001 murders, though? Were those officially tied to Burkhart, too?
Oh, yeah. There was a mountain of evidence. The relatives' tip putting him near the crime scenes, his suspicious behavior, and, of course, the DNA match.
Right.
But there was also some very damning physical evidence.
Oh, really? Like what?
They searched Burkhart's storage locker and found some of Rebecca Nash's things, a TV, VCR, even blood-stained clothes.
Wow.
He'd even pawned a ring of hers. They were closing in fast.
So he was leaving a trail, basically.
Yeah, he was starting to unravel.
So what happened next? Did they finally get him?
Well, they issued a warrant for his arrest. And just hours later, Burkhart took his own life.
Oh, wow. Are you serious?
Yeah, drug overdose, left a suicide note, but it's never been released.
Wow. Talk about a twist. So close to facing justice, he chose to end it on his own terms.
Yeah, a lot of unanswered questions there.
Yeah. It's a reminder that even when you think a case is solved, there are still mysteries.
Absolutely. There's always more to uncover.
Now, I do remember from the sources you sent that there were two other murders around that time, Michelle Welch and Jennifer Bastian.
Oh yeah, those were big cases. Shook the whole community.
Right. I think people initially thought those were connected to Burkhart, too.
Yeah, a lot of speculation back then.
But those were solved separately, right?
Right.
With different perpetrators.
Yeah, good old-fashioned police work. And of course, DNA evidence played a role too.
That's a whole other rabbit hole we could go down, but let's stick with Burkhart for now.
Right, right. We can always come back to those.
So it's fascinating and kind of scary that he managed to stay off the radar for so long. You know, a seemingly normal guy living his life, but with this horrible secret.
It's chilling.
Makes you wonder, what could have possibly gone so wrong in his life to make him do these things?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And sadly, one we might never have the answer to.
Especially with his suicide, no chance to get inside his head.
Yeah, no confession, no trial, just a lot of unanswered questions.
It's like looking at a puzzle with missing pieces.
Exactly.
But maybe by looking closely at his crimes, we can at least get some clues.
Yeah, I think there's a lot we can learn from the how, even if we don't have the why.
So let's dive into that, shall we? What jumps out at you about Burkhart's MO? What can we learn from how he carried out these awful acts?
Well, let's start with his choice of victims, shall we?
Sounds good to me.
He seemed to mainly go after vulnerable young women, but then there's that shift in 2001 with Catherine Coates and Rebecca Nash, the older women.
Yeah, that was definitely a change.
So what do we make of that? Was it a change in his, his preferences, his desires, or was it something more circumstantial?
That's a good question, something to think about for sure.
Yeah, like did something shift in his psychology as he got older?
Maybe he felt more powerful, more in control with older victims.
It's possible, a chilling thought, but definitely possible.
So not just random, but a deliberate change in his hunting strategy.
Exactly.
Or maybe it was just about opportunity, right?
Could be. Maybe his life circumstances changed, gave him access to different kinds of victims.
We know he was doing petty theft. Maybe that's how he crossed paths with Coates and Nash.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't a deep psychological shift, just a change in his daily life, his routines.
So we're left with these questions, these missing pieces.
Yep, and it's important to remember we're working with limited information.
Right.
We could speculate, analyze, but without Burkhart himself, we'll never know for sure.
It's part of the frustration, but also the fascination of true crime.
Oh, absolutely.
Always searching for answers, knowing that some questions might never be answered.
That's the nature of the beast, right? It keeps us coming back for more.
Exactly. It forces us to look at the dark side of human nature, makes you question everything.
Like how someone like Burkhart could just blend in, live a normal life
Yeah.
with this terrible secret.
Right. A reminder that monsters don't always look like monsters.
They could be anyone, anywhere.
Makes you realize how important it is to be aware, to trust your gut, to speak up if something seems off.
Couldn't agree more. We can't just rely on law enforcement. We all have a part to play in keeping each other safe.
This case really is a web of what-ifs, makes you think about the ripple effects of these crimes, not just on the victims and their families, but on the whole community.
Oh, absolutely. The fear, the anxiety, it lingers long after the headlines fade.
So where do we go from here? We've covered the timeline, the investigation, all those unanswered questions. What do you hope our listener will take away from this deep dive?
Well, I hope they see how far we've come with forensic science, especially DNA technology.
Right.
Without it, this case might still be cold. Those early victims forgotten.
It's amazing how science can bring justice, even years later.
It's like a beacon of hope, that even in the darkest cases, there's a chance for truth to come out.
And it's a good reminder that these cases aren't solved by just one person.
Oh, absolutely. It's a team effort.
Detective Miller was key, but there were so many people involved, from the labs to the tipsters.
Yeah, it's a testament to collaboration, persistence, and never giving up.
And of course, we can't forget the victims.
Never.
Denise Sally, Kimberly Ann Payne, Catherine Coates, Rebecca Nash. Their lives were cut short by this senseless violence.
We have to remember them, honor their memory by fighting for justice and preventing future tragedies.
Well said. And for our listener, if you're interested in learning more, I encourage you to check out the sources you sent.
Yeah, there's a ton of information out there. Do your own research, ask questions, and keep those conversations going.
That's the power of true crime, right? It's more than just a story. It's a way to learn, to think critically, and to make a difference.
Absolutely. It's a window into the human condition, for better or worse.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of Timothy Burkhart.
Thanks for having me.
It's been heavy, but important. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.
And keep those tips coming.
Absolutely. We love hearing from you guys, so keep sending those cases our way.
We'll see you next time.
See ya.
They were building a strong case, no doubt about it. But the real game changer, that was the DNA.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Detective Miller, he was smart, requested testing on the evidence from '86, Denise, Sally, and Kimberly Ann Payne's murders.
Wait, hold on. They had evidence from that long ago.
Standard procedure, you always keep it, just in case.
Wow, that's incredible. Like they knew one day technology could catch up.
Exactly. Forward thinking, for sure. And in this case, it paid off big time.
So the results came back, what, a match?
A match. Timothy Burkhart, directly linked to those murders.
So after all those years, those girls, their families finally had some answers.
Closure, some semblance of justice. It's what we always hope for.
What about the 2001 cases, though? Were those officially connected to Burkhart, too?
Oh, yeah. Tons of circumstantial evidence, the relative's tip, his past behavior, the DNA match.
Right. But was there anything more concrete, anything directly linking him to those murders?
Oh, there was some pretty damning stuff, actually.
Really? Like what?
They searched his storage locker, found some of Rebecca Nash's belongings, a TV, a VCR, get this, bloodstained clothing.
Are you kidding?
Nope, and he'd even pawned a ring of hers. They were closing in fast.
It's like he was falling apart, leaving a trail everywhere he went.
Exactly. The walls were closing in.
So what happened then? Did they finally catch him?
Well, they got a warrant for his arrest.
Okay.
And just hours later, Burkhart, he committed suicide.
No way! Are you serious?
Yeah, overdosed on medication, left a note, but it's never been made public.
Wow, what a turn of events. So close to finally facing justice, he decides to end it himself.
It's a common theme. Unfortunately, a lot of these guys would rather die than face the music.
Yeah, it just leaves you with so many questions, so much you'll never know.
That's the nature of this work sometimes.
It's a reminder that even when a case is closed, there are still these lingering mysteries.
Absolutely. More questions than answers sometimes.
Speaking of other cases, I remember from the sources you sent, there were 2 other murders around that time, Michelle Welch and Jennifer Bastian.
Oh, yeah. Those were big cases, tragic, shook the community to its core.
I think initially there was speculation that those were connected to Burkhart too, right?
Yeah, there are some similarities. It's natural to look for connections.
But ultimately those were solved, separate perpetrators.
That's right. DNA evidence came in clutch again, helped to bring those responsible to justice.
It's a whole other story, another rabbit hole we could explore another time.
We could do a whole deep dive on just those cases alone.
Exactly, but let's stick with Burkhart for now. Right. It's amazing and kind of terrifying that he was able to operate under the radar for so long.
Just blended in, a normal guy, but with this dark, twisted secret.
It makes you wonder, what makes someone like that? What leads them down that path?
It's the age-old question, isn't it?
Yep.
Nature versus nurture, environment, trauma. Who knows?
And sadly, with his suicide, we'll never get those answers from him directly.
Nope. Those insights are lost forever.
It's like a missing piece of the puzzle, forever eluding us.
That's the frustrating part of true crime. Sometimes the truth remains hidden.
Right. But maybe by looking closely at his crimes, how he operated, we can at least glean some insight into his mindset.
Yeah, the how can be just as revealing as the why. Sometimes even more so.
So let's dive into that, shall we? What stands out to you about his MO, his methods? What can we learn from the specifics of his crimes?
Let's start with the victims, shall we? Those choices are often the most telling.
Okay, that's a good place to start.
Primarily young, vulnerable women. But then that shift in 2001, Catherine Coates and Rebecca Nash, the older women.
Yeah, definitely a change in pattern.
So what does that tell us? Was it a deliberate shift in his preferences, his desires? Or was it simply a matter of opportunity? That's a tough one to crack, right? Trying to figure out what's going on in Burkhart's head.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to understand a ghost.
Exactly. We're looking for those clues, those hints, But sometimes those whys, they just stay hidden.
It's true, some mysteries just stay mysteries.
But even without those clear-cut answers, there's still a lot we can learn.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like you said, the how can be just as important as the why.
Exactly. The details, the specifics, they
Yeah.
can tell their own story.
So let's start with the victims.
Okay.
Mostly young women, right? Vulnerable. But then in 2001, we see that shift. Catherine Coates, Rebecca Nash, older women.
Right, right. So what do we make of that?
What's your take on that?
It's a big question, isn't it? Was it a conscious choice? Did his taste change as he got older?
Like, did he get some kind of twisted satisfaction from targeting older women?
It's possible. A disturbing thought, but we have to consider it.
Yeah, you're right. So it's not just random. It's almost like a change in strategy.
Exactly. Like a predator adapting to a new hunting ground.
Makes you wonder what was going on in his life at that time, right?
Exactly. Was there something specific that triggered this shift?
Or maybe it was just, being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Opportunity? Pure and simple.
We know he was involved in petty theft. Maybe that's how he crossed paths with Coates and Nash.
Yeah, could be. Just a chance encounter that turned deadly.
So many pieces of the puzzle, so many questions we'll never have the answers to.
It's the nature of the game sometimes.
It's frustrating, but it's also what keeps us coming back to these cases.
Oh, absolutely. That search for answers, that drive to understand the darkness.
It makes you realize that evil can hide anywhere, even in the most ordinary people.
Burkhart, he was the perfect example of that. A seemingly normal guy leading a double life.
It's a chilling thought. Makes you question everything and everyone.
Exactly. It's a reminder to always be vigilant, trust your instincts, never take anything for granted.
Well said. Well said. And for our listeners out there, if this case has piqued your interest, dive into those sources we talked about.
Yeah, there's a ton of info out there. Articles, reports, court documents. Do your own research, come to your own conclusions.
That's the beauty of true crime. It's not just about the story. It's about asking questions, challenging yourself to think critically.
And never forgetting the victims.
Right. Denise Ali, Kimberly Ann Payne, Catherine Coates, Rebecca Nash, their lives were tragically cut short, and we owe it to them to remember, to learn, and to fight for a world where these horrors happen less and less.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that about wraps it up for this deep dive. A heavy one for sure, but an important one nonetheless.
Absolutely. These conversations need to be had.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and as always, stay safe.
See you next time.
Take care.